this episode, I was thinking to talk about something which I think is actually going to be a very natural progression from what we talked about last week. Last week we talked about Tikkun Olam and the big picture of the Jewish perspective, the universal vision for what we're trying to do, what the goal is, and how that plays out, and what the ramifications are. So today I want to deal with kind of the natural extension of that discussion, and that is, okay, so let's say we did the Tikkun Olam. Like, what's the end game? What is the progression afterwards? Okay, so if we're here for a purpose, and that purpose is to fix the world, and the world's broken because we don't see God, and we fix that by bringing God into the world. Okay, so what happens once we do that? Like, what do we do with a fixed world? Like, what happens then? And I think that a lot of the topics that we'll be discussing today are things that we're all familiar with, at least terminology-wise, but definitions are somewhat not as prevalent as familiarity with terms. And additionally, there's a lot of confusion in a lot of these areas because you hear something about, let's say, reincarnation, or you hear something about Mashiach, or you hear something about Olam Haba, and you hear something about Gan Eden. All these terms that maybe you're all familiar, maybe yes, maybe no, but you hear that. You hear about Tchiyat HaMeitim, reviving the dead. Like, it's something part of our prayer. And the question is, how do they all fit together? What are the sources? What do the sources say, and what's conjecture? Like, what's sourced? And everything I'm going to talk about today is absolutely sourced, and I can give you the sources. And I have them all verified. And that's why we're not going to be talking about reincarnation, because there is no sources in classical Jewish literature.
There is dispute with Maimonides.
Maimonides and Rebbe. Talking about going back to the Talmudic era.
So there's nothing about reincarnation.
Well, there is. I'm not going to say there's nothing, but classical. I'm saying classical sources. I'm talking about Talmud Midrash, Talmud Midrash of reincarnation. And additionally, I think that even reincarnation, that's a step before what we're talking about. That's like, okay, you had a purpose in the world, you didn't complete it, or you failed, or whatever. Not you, I'm saying you as an individual, and now you're starting from scratch. But we want to pivot to the next stage. Okay, all of us collectively fulfilled our purpose, fulfilled our mission, collectively as a nation, as a society, as a community, as a family, as a people, as a race, as a whatever species. We completed our tikkun. We fulfilled everything. Okay, now what? What is the next kind of phase of existence? Go ahead.
So in our daily prayers,
yes,
the one that says you will revive the dead, where's that source from?
I'm sorry? Where's that source?
Yeah, where's that
we'll
from?
Get to where the sources are.
Okay, but that's not. You're not talking about. That's not referencing.
Reviving that, absolutely.
You're asking what the bracha is, what the prayer is, or what?
No, it's in our Friday.
Yeah,
service.
but remember, even
our weekday service.
It's on every service.
It's in
every single service that we say. It's and that's.
It's the what is that?
It's the part of the Amidah. Amidah prayer.
Okay.
And it's also one of the 13 principles of Maimonides as well, is to believe in the reviving the dead. So what does that mean? What happens to revive the dead? We're all sitting there to revive the dead.
Revival of the dead is different from reincarnation.
Absolutely, right. Yeah. Well, we're not talking about reincarnation, but I also think reincarnation is also more of a stepping stone, not necessarily an entirely different phase of existence. So, we spoke about last week about the idea of a 2,000 years of Mashiach, which is essentially a 2,000-year time period in which we have to achieve a certain goal, and that is universal realization, acceptance, recognition of a very important principle, and that is the idea of God. Right? The world starts off, there's chaos, there's confusion, there's lack of clarity, there's lack of understanding, there's lack of insight. Comes along Abraham, and now we have some idea, and there's a family and a burgeoning movement that's going to perpetuate this idea. Comes along Torah, now there's a nation, and the idea of Messiah is a universal acceptance of this idea. Go ahead.
So for Goyim, the idea of what they have to do for a complete Tikkun Olam is just recognize God, or the 7 laws
as well, the 7 laws as well. Yes. Okay, so what this tells us, obviously, is that the idea of Mashiach is not just an individual, it's not just an episode, it's not just one-time event that's going to be some sort of transformational for the world and for us humans. It's a process. It's a 2,000-year process. It starts off, that at the beginning of the 2,000-year process, well, then there's a very established nation that is espousing the idea of God and observing the idea of God. And then now at the end of 2,000 years, it has to be not just a nation, the entire world. So thus, the idea of Mashiach, the event, is the punctuation, it's the completion, it's the finalization of a 2,000-year process. I think that's a very critical critical point. Now, just quickly.
Hello.
Hey, sorry.
Dog thing.
I don't know how. No, I don't think he did.
Oh, you did?
Because he normally doesn't do that. But
Like, what are the qualifications of Mashiach? What needs to happen? Who is this individual, and what's their role exactly in transitioning the world from this world to some other world? And in that world, well, what happens then? So we find in the sources a few things. Number one, that this is an individual, and he's not some sort of miracle master or some sort of larger-than-life human, someone who's going to die, by the way. It's also someone who's going to have a regular, normal life, birth, death, and none of that whole rebirth nonsense. This is going to be someone from the Davidic line. That's right. Someone who, Maimonides writes, will study Torah and observe the mitzvahs like David. Someone who's going to influence Israel to abide by the Torah. And someone's going to battle the wars of Hashem. Now, what that actually means is up for, I think, discussion. The wars of Hashem could actually mean like there's a war, there's a battle. I don't know, the Palestinians come after us, or the Russians, or the Chinese, or whatever. Not you guys. I don't know, the Russians,
You're already here.
the North Koreans.
Oh, great.
And now in Ukraine.
It could mean that it's a physical battle, and that's possible. We know that we have some sources that talk about this apocalyptic, Armageddon-like war. We know that in Jewish writings. But I think it's far more likely that the battles of Hashem is essentially more the spiritual battles. Like, the Almighty doesn't need us to fight a physical battle for us, but the role that we have as humans and as Jews in the world is to stand up for an idea, for a way of life, for an ideology. And that's what it means that's what I think. I think it's a good argument to be made. That means when the Mashiach will battle the wars of Hashem, it means that he will be at the forefront of the conflict that exists in the world, wherein the world is designed to enable rejection of the Almighty and that idea. So that's the character profile, and we know the accomplishments there's like 5 or 6 accomplishments that Maimonides delineates to reestablish the kingdom of Israel. So once again, like they have a Davidic king. Now, could that mean that he'll be prime minister, or that mean maybe he'll be a judge, or maybe that'll mean that he'll be a spiritual leader, but someone who's recognized as the leader of Israel? Who knows? Doesn't mean that it has to be a king. It has to be we have to abolish the democracy. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. I think that's not the core point. I mean, he'll be an influential leader, build the temple. So this is, I think, politically a big discussion. Like, Israel, if they wanted, they have the military might to go with bulldozers and knock down whatever impediments there are to. You would do it, right?
Will they lose the
Stop being
US
so
support,
nice.
though?
Okay, well,
I'm
but
sure there won't be an international backlash if Israel did that.
No. They wouldn't say anything.
you know that in Islam. So by the way, the shrine, Dome of the Rock shrine, is actually not a mosque. Built in 691. It's 690. Only 20 years, maybe 30 years ago, King Hussein of Jordan, he sold one of his houses in London, and he used the money to buy 80 kilos of gold. And that's how they painted. If you look at old pictures, like from the 40s and 50s of the Dome of the Rock, it's just stone. Now they
It's nothing.
but it's
a joke,
interesting
but
that
go on.
that every Islamic structure in the world has a crescent on it, the symbol of Islam, and the crescent's always pointed towards Mecca.
The moon god, the one that you worship, right?
No, the Muslims don't worship. Maimonides writes that the Muslims don't worship any foreign
Allah
god.
was.
I don't know what
the
Allah
moon
was,
god.
but the
they're
ideology, they're true monotheists as opposed to the Christians that
Yes,
are
but They
monotheists.
chose one god and they worship him. But okay, go on. I'm sorry. I'm just very.
Go ahead.
Islam, so.
Just
So
came
it's
from
not.
Dubai.
It doesn't coincide with Jewish teaching. So.
But either way, so
For sure.
Yeah.
but this is the only Islamic structure, not the only, but one of the only Islamic structures that actually has a circle on top. If you look very closely at the Dome of the Rock, it has a circle. So I once theorized that the reason why it has a circle is that when the time comes to rebuild the temple on Temple Mount, that's the place where Solomon's temple. That's where Ezra rebuilt the second temple. We had 800 years of a temple there, 830 to be precise. Like it's been a Jewish site for a really, really long time. Hundreds, thousands of years, almost, or not thousands, but 1,500 years before Islam was even founded, we had a temple on that site.
Question. When you say build, I don't know if there's sources where I thought the actual temples is going to come down and.
Once again, these are, let's source it.
I'm asking if there are a source.
Yeah, this is debate amongst the Rishonim. According to Rashi and the Raiva, so two of the commentaries, they say that it'll actually become self-built. It'll descend from heaven and fire.
Like
I don't know.
Sukkah kit.
Yeah.
For Sukkot,
Yeah.
They already have all the
temple
materials built.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's a lot of stone, a lot of wood, a lot of
But
gold,
it
a lot
would
of
be
copper.
strange because in the Torah there's so many details about how to build it.
Yeah, and it's a mitzvah as well.
But
So
they have
Maimonides
all the
goes
materials
with
already
the.
to rebuild
Yeah.
it.
We know that it's a mitzvah of the Torah. One of the mitzvahs of the Torah is to build
like everything.
a temple.
Yeah, they have the
We have a
manual,
mitzvah,
they have the-
essentially. It's a question why we don't have this mitzvah right
I
now.
actually saw it.
Right?
He was here in Houston some few years ago or something. Maybe a little more than that. I forgot his name. He's the main rabbi of the Temple Mount. But he was here in Houston and
And he brought the plates with the stones.
About the what?
You know the
The breastplate.
yeah.
Oh, the
Yeah, so
Ouija
I-
thing?
Yeah.
Not the predicting thing?
We really?
Like predicts like stuff?
Go on, Rabbi.
Okay.
So,
It tells you to attack.
Yeah, it tells you to attack, not to.
Yeah. Urim V'Tumim, that's right.
Same like,
So it has a circle. So my theory is that the reason why is when they want to rebuild the temple, they'll take like a bulldozer and they'll hook a thing through it and just lift the whole thing out. But either way,
That'd be great.
for us, we kind of, in hindsight, we have the gift of hindsight to see the fact that that the Jewish people are essentially at the doorstep. There's 6 million Jews in Israel, which is mind-boggling if you take into the fact that that 200 years ago, even 150 years ago, there weren't 6,000 Jews in Israel. It was not, maybe there were 6,000, but there weren't for sure weren't 60,000 Jews in Israel. Now there's 6 million Jews in Israel, which is remarkable. It's mind-boggling, and very quickly it's becoming the biggest Jewish center in the world. So the next thing, gather the dispersed Jews to Israel. Part of this conclusion, this kind of coming back to our sources, is going back to Israel. And we kind of see how the progress, we're making significant headway towards that end as we speak. We had in our community where I live in Northfield, there's 5 families that are leaving the community now. One of them's going to New York, and 4 making Aliyah. So we have 4 families from our neighborhood saying we're moving to Israel. Families with kids and whatever.
See?
So it's a massive movement.
Well, Russia contributed a lot to that.
Of course.
40% of the Israeli Jews do speak Russian. They're from Russia.
Additionally,
Hasn't
Right now.
ended yet. Yeah, no. Well, Europe in general is the Jews are
So this is
dumping
one of the
into,
5 things that would.
so he said, reestablish the kingdom of Israel,
Temple.
build a temple,
Bring
gather
them
the
to-
dispersed Jews to Israel, oversee the reinstitution of Jewish law. This is an important point. Jewish law has to be retransitioned back into the law of the land. Now, actually, there's a bill right now in the Knesset which would change the Israeli law system from being essentially just a child of British common law to being inspired by Jewish law, like kind of changing the flavor, so to speak.
The structure?
No, not. I don't think they're going to change any laws, but change it kind of at large, where it's going to be officially, by legislative, labeling it as being inspired by Jewish law. And there's a significant and growing movement towards in Israel towards achieving this end.
But if the Mashiach comes and institutes halacha,
Yeah.
he will have to transition from Hillel to Shammai because Shammai is after the right. The Mashiach.
After
Okay,
the
well,
Mashiach.
I don't know. You have to quote these things. Remember, that's the rule tonight. Everything has to be quoted.
Oh, that's not quoted?
What does it say? It says,
Hillel.
but what exactly does it say? Does it say that Bimot Mashiach, or does it say Latid Lavo? Go ahead. What exactly does it say? This is very important. The semantics here are very important.
I'll find it.
I believe it says Latid Lavo, which means in the future, which we
Is
don't
it?
know. Yes, I believe that's what it says. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure.
Where's Ben?
Where is it?
I know. It's working.
And the last two are to reestablish sacrificial and agricultural laws in
Yes, a
Israel.
question.
Yes, go ahead.
So the rebuilding of the state of Israel that you said, like the whoever is going to be the king or whatever. So would that mean that the Sanhedrin have to be
Yes, so reestablish Sanhedrin. There's somewhat of a technical problem. So for those who are not familiar, the Sanhedrin is a body, a judicial body of the Jewish people, which is actually established by Moses. Moses establishes, actually in the book of Numbers, I believe it's chapter 16. Moses, maybe chapter 10, verse 16.
That was when his dad said, "You cannot do this alone."
His
No.
father-in-law.
That was something else.
Jethro.
That was something else. This is 71.
Yitro.
Right. That was heads of 10s, heads of 50, heads of 100, heads of 1,000, of 10,000. Right.
Yeah.
Not that. That's something else. That's also compartmentalization of the judicial process.
That thing.
Compartmentalization. Thank you. Of law. This is the kind of the Supreme Court, and in fact, in Jewish law, we have courts comprised of 3 justices.
No, but it's not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court cannot legislate. It
Well,
just
right.
interprets.
They adjudicate.
Yeah.
That's right. It's the
It's
and
a
they too
combined-
they
it's the
adjudicate.
combined thing.
They also adjudicate. So there's courts comprised of 3 justices, court comprised of 23 justices, and there's one court in Jerusalem, which by the way was in session from Moses' time till the end of the 4th century of the Common Era. So we're talking about 1,700 years of uninterrupted. Well, not precisely not interrupted, because it was interrupted after the second temple was destroyed for a little bit. They were disbanded slightly, even though they still maintained a group. But they left Jerusalem and they went traveling all over northern Israel. But for the most part, uninterrupted 1,700 years of this body being in perpetual session. Now, the problem with that is there's a major technical problem. Is that in order to be part of the Sanhedrin, you have to have smicha. Now, what does smicha mean?
authority?
Now, smicha means rabbinic ordination. But now, like I'm licensed as a rabbi. I have multiple smichas.
Authority from there.
However, the smicha that we have today, is very different than the smicha that we have to be qualified as a member of the Sanhedrin. In order to be a member of the Sanhedrin, you have to have smicha that comes from someone who receives smicha, who comes from someone who receives smicha from Moses. So Moses gave out smicha, and then Joshua gave out smicha, etc., etc. That was perpetuated until Hadrian in the 2nd century of the Common Era. One of Hadrian's persecutions against the Jewish people. That's the Roman. That's right, the Roman Emperor Hadrian. One of his rules against Torah was that he said if someone conveys smicha to someone else, so if a rabbi says, okay, I have a student now who's worthy of receiving smicha, the rabbi is going to get executed, the student will get executed, and in fact the entire town will be destroyed. The entire town in which the smicha was conferred will be destroyed. And there was the great story, the one great hero, Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, who took 5 students, and he stood right in between 2 towns, and he gave them smicha, and the Romans came, and they threw 300 spears at him, and they killed him, but the students escaped. Go ahead.
Where does smicha come from?
Well, it's sourced in the Torah.
Where?
A few places. It's Shoftim v'Shotrim Tielacha. In the Talmud, at the beginning of Sanhedrin, it brings the verses where it's sourced. Go ahead.
No, we were talking about, we have to mention the source. Of
Okay, fine.
So
Now the
I want to hear it.
Yeah, so the problem is that
No, I expect it from everybody.
so the problem is that once this line is stopped, it essentially cannot be perpetuated because you cannot have smicha, you cannot convey smicha unless you yourself are a recipient of smicha. So, and if we have to reestablish a Sanhedrin, and it's not possible to establish a Sanhedrin because we have no people who are worthy of candidates because no one has smicha to give smicha, that's a problem, a technical problem with reestablishing a Sanhedrin. So
Mashiach should
Maimonides,
be able to give.
but if he doesn't have smicha, right? So, but he's not.
No, no, no.
So what? That doesn't make him a superhuman, right?
No, no, no.
Rabbi,
You don't have to be
Rabbi.
superhuman to give shmita.
Where does smicha come from?
I said it's in the Torah where you want to make someone into a judge, depending on what
Come from judgment. So
that
what book is
depending
that?
on what is the content of their of the particular court case, whether it be, let's say, civil matters, religious matters, sacrificial laws, depending on what laws that they're adjudicating, that would change whether or not they need to be a musmach. So, for example, even during the times of the temple, in Babylon there was no smicha. So the Talmud asks, well, how did the courts in Babylon, how did they adjudicate any cases when they didn't have smicha? So it says, well, shlichusai ka'avdi, that they did the bidding, so to speak, of their friends and fellows in Israel. It's as if the collective rabbinate of Israel, they appointed all the rabbis in Babylon to be their emissaries in adjudicating law. Okay.
Can you say the Hebrew word for the agricultural where you don't pick the fruits? How do you say that word?
Shemitah?
And what are you saying?
Shemitah?
Smicha.
Smicha and Shemitah.
Smicha.
Okay, wait, say it again.
Say it slower.
Smicha, Shemitah.
Shemitah and smicha.
Shemitah.
Yes. Shemitah is the seventh year. You don't do work in the land. Shemitah.
Shemitah.
And smicha actually means to support. S-M-I-C-H.
S-M-I-C-H.
Is
And then,
smicha.
and then Shemitah.
Yeah,
or something.
S-H-M-I-T-T-A-H or no H.
That ends this year, right?
That's right. This year is
Yeah.
the current year is a
In
Shemitah year.
September.
That's right.
That's
Even though some of the
when
laws extend.
The Catholic Pope is actually coming to the United States for the first time to speak to Congress.
Who?
I'm sorry, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but go on,
The
Rabbi.
Pope? Oh, you think
Yes.
these are connected? These are
Well, there are certain things that have not happened in the past that are happening now, but this is outside of Judaism. It's more a conspiracy theory with.
So the process of
Politics and
being
economics.
appointed, you can't base it
Yeah,
on lineage.
so Maimonides, he gives us a loophole, and he says that if the sages of the generation decide that there's a need to reestablish smicha, they could do it they could confer smicha even if they themselves are not recipients of smicha. So we know in the 15th, or actually 16th century, 1500s, in Tzfat, in northern Israel, there was an effort to reestablish smicha, and there was a fellow who was called Maribei Rav, that was his name, and he conferred smicha to himself and to two other rabbis, and there was an international Jewish uproar, because there always is an international Jewish uproar, because whenever you talk about smicha with regards to the biblical smicha needed for making someone worthy of being in the Sanhedrin, you're always talking about messianic terms. Anytime you mention Messiah or messianic ambition, everyone gets very wary. So that's where it started and it stopped. There was this, like I said, there was somewhat of an effort to do that. One of the recipients of the smicha is Rabbi Joseph Cairo, who is one of the pivotal characters in all of Jewish history, as the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Bet Yosef, the Kesef Mishnah, one of the most prolific and influential individuals in all of Jewish history. And that's a big, big deal because he's only relatively recently, We're talking about Maimonides and Ravina Ravashi and Rabbi Judah the Prince and Ezra and Moses. He has that kind of crucial role in actually making a universal but a national influence with his writings and with his leadership. Either way, so that's that. So someone asked about the Sanhedrin. Yes, so there are other things you need to be qualified to be a Sanhedrin, to be part of the Sanhedrin, but either way, that would also be part and parcel of what would happen in time of Messiah. Now, Messiah does not need to be a miracle worker. He does need to. We don't ask for any signs. Maimonides goes to great lengths to prove this. He says, for example, Bar Kokhba, as we all know, Bar Kokhba was a great military leader who headed the year 132, the effort of reestablishing sovereignty over Israel, and he was successful. Him and his rebellion was successful of actually ridding Israel of Romans for 3 years, from the year 132 to 135. And Rabbi Akiva, the preeminent sage of the time, he said Bar Kokhba he looks like the Mashiach. And what happened? Bar Kokhba died. And after he died, he said, oh, once he died, it was clear that he's not Mashiach. That's what the Rambam says. And by the way, this the Rambam. Everything I'm quoting from the Rambam, just to prevent your next question, is from the very 2 last chapters of the Rambam. Goodness.
Which one's that?
Which is in the book of Shoftim, which is the 14th out of 14 books. In the Hilchos, I think it's Malachim, Laws of Kings. Chapter 10 and chapter 11 are the very 2 last chapters of Maimonides, in which he tells us all the details of Messiah and what it means for us. And by the way, an important point here to realize is that we know that Maimonides wrote his books in order of importance.
I thought that was an assumption.
In order of importance, from greatest to least or least to
Well,
There's no
wait.
assumption.
Yes,
No, I don't believe it's explicitly mentioned anywhere, but it's undeniably evident that that's what he did, because he starts off with the laws of the foundations of the Torah, and then he moves on to the laws of rejecting idolatry, and then he moves on to the laws of Torah study, and then he moves on to the laws of proper character, and then he moves on to the laws of tshuva. Like, those are core elements of Torah, and the first thing he talks about is believe in God, so he's clearly not working in the order of the Torah, as in start with be fruitful, multiply, and move on to the laws of circumcision and the sciatica. He's clearly moving in order of importance. Now, the second to last thing that Maimonides talks about is the laws of Gentiles. Thus, in my opinion, it seems like Maimonides is kind of telling us, you Jews, you reading my book? Oh, fantastic. This is the book of Jewish law. Wonderful. It's more important for you to actually study what Gentiles need to do than Messiah. And he exhorts us in his final kind of statement where he talks about Messiah. He says, don't think too much about it, because you know why? You won't get not love of God, not fear of God. None of the 2 core elements of Jewish greatness can be deduced or derived or inspired by thinking about Messiah. It's just you have to believe it. You have to understand it. You have to realize that a lot of the things are metaphorical, like the wolf and the lamb lying together. He says he singles that out as an example of something which is a metaphor where enemies can get along. It doesn't mean that a wolf and a lamb are just sitting there and chilling out and I don't know, having a beer. Right. Additionally, another very important point is that he says, like we mentioned, that the Messiah does not need to do any signs or any miracles or revive the dead or anything like that. And in fact, one of the signs of false messiahs in Jewish history are that they tamper with the law. So he says, for example, if someone adds or subtracts a mitzvah from the Torah, that is a clear sign that this is a false messiah. And we know that JC, for example, and Shabtai Tzvi, Yimach Shemo, he was a false messiah in the 16th century. And it was very disastrous what happened, because everyone, messianic expectations were so high, things were so bad, and Jewish people said, oh, Mashiach will come, and this one super talented and charismatic leader says, oh, I'm your guy. And then a lot of Jews in Europe sold their houses and started moving to Israel, and then on his way to Israel, he stopped off in Turkey, and the guy says, oh, really? Oh, you're the Messiah? Oh, is that true? This is the Ottomans. Actually, if you don't convert to Islam, I'm going to chop your head off. He's like, okay, I'll convert to Islam. And he's like, what the heck, right? So he converted to Islam. That's what happened to that. But then all the Jews are there with their suitcases on the doorstep of Israel, and they're like, we actually sold everything. We're not going home. We're here for Messiah. Where's the Messiah? And they're like, dude, So that was disastrous. And by the way, if you ever encounter a hesitancy or skepticism with regards to Kabbalah, there's deep-seated skepticism by any proponent of public teaching of Kabbalah ever since the times of Shabtai Tzvi, because that's what he did. He was a great scholar, and he would dazzle and enamor people with his knowledge, especially in the mystical parts of Jewish learning. And the feeling was afterwards that, it's dangerous. You have people studying it, and it gets to their head, and they think that they're, they get megalomaniacal as a result of their Kabbalah. It doesn't do anything for them. So ever since then, by the way, Luzzatto, right? Ramchal, we're familiar with that name. He was banished from Italy in 1727. So 1727 is more than 100 years after Shabtai Tzvi, the whole episode. Actually, I think it was 1650, so maybe it was a significant amount of time later. Because Ramchal, Luzzatto, was a 20-year-old young man who was dabbling in Kabbalah, they said, out of Italy. He actually moved to Israel. They kicked Ramchal out of Italy because they were very wary. They've seen this before. The young phenom who wants to study Kabbalah. So that's why he was banished to Italy. And in fact, even in the 1760s, there was a controversy, the Eibeshitz and Emden controversy, that tore apart European Jewry, where essentially two of the greatest rabbis at the time were actually neighbors in a small little city in the middle of nowhere, and one of them accused the other one of being a Sabbatean. Sabbatean means someone who's a closet follower of Shabtai Tzvi, even though Shabtai Tzvi has been dead for 100 years. Right? And he wrote articles and published publications against the other guy who lived across the street from him, and disseminated it throughout Europe, saying this guy is a secret Sabbatean, and he proved it from his writings, and he proved it. He allegedly tried to prove it, and essentially it caused a rift, a split amongst European Jewry. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the story, but these are all the results of what happens after terrible episodes of false messiahs.
I really have an honest question. I don't mean to be
Go ahead.
offensive.
Go ahead.
Isn't that the start? That's the lineage of how Chabad got started, no? From that separation.
No.
Isn't that the
No.
Isn't that the following?
No. This is not. No. Hasidism.
That's it.
No, that's something else. That's something
What
else.
is that?
That's not related to the Eibeshitz Emden controversy. That's the
What
second
would you
generation.
call that word?
Eibeshitz Emden. Those are
The
their
S
names.
word.
Sabbateans.
Sabbateens. How you spell that?
I don't know. S-A-B-B-E.
S-A-B-T-I-E-N-S.
Shabtai Tzvians, Sabbateans. I think it's spelled S-A-B-B-E-A-T-O-N or A-N-A-N-S. Either way, we find the following statement. I think this may be the most important one with regards to the ideas of Messiah. And that is the Rambam tells us, he quotes the Talmud in Sanhedrin, Ein bein olam hazeh limot Mashiach, ela shibud malchut bavad. There's no difference between this world and the world of Messiah, only subjugation to the kingdom. In this world, we're subjugated, and after Mashiach comes, there's no change. Right? The olam kimin hago omed. The world, everything perpetuates the same way. Right? Nothing fanciful. No candy growing trees or anything like that. No one's flying around in hoverboards. Well, maybe people are, but not in any nature-defined capacity. Rather, the only difference is that now we're subjugated to the kingdom, and afterwards we're not subjugated to the kingdom. Now, that could mean is that we have the freedom, we have independence, maybe we have the state of Israel. We can all move to Israel. We're not subjugated to foreign kingdoms. That's a very good interpretation of what that means. But perhaps it also means that there's a more intimate kingdom, a more personal kingdom that we all have, and that is the dominion that we all suffer from our Yetzirah, from our evil inclination. Wherein, when someone says, I cannot talk to you until I have my coffee, what does that mean, right? Have you ever heard that? Don't talk to me before I have a coffee. You've heard that? What does that mean? It means that I am under the total control and dominion of my urge to have a coffee. And therefore, I'm not a human until I have that, right? I'm dependent on this, right? That's what it means. Now,
Does that change them from being a human?
no, it just means that they're a human in captivity or in subjugation.
Their urges
Dominate them, that's right.
The animal part is...
That's right. That's an example of what the Yetzer Hara does to us. Right? The Yetzer Hara tells us is that you have to be this way. You cannot possibly be any other way. Like if someone says, I had a student tell me, I cannot observe Shabbat. I can't do it, no matter what. Why? Because maybe I'll have to go visit, right? You can't. you're shackled. You have your hands tied behind your back, and you have handcuffs on them. Right? You are bound to the death by every single week. Why? Because you are a slave. That's the real answer. You're a slave because you said I can't. Huh? It's what we call the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, which is it's a kingdom essentially where God is not our king. It's this force is our king, and that dominates us.
What is this force?
Well, that's a good question. It's an entire
very
class.
good. I mean, I want to know about this other world
yes.
that pulls me away from God.
Right. It's the Yetzer Hara. It's the
every
force that the
physical-
Almighty created to make this friction, this tension, and to kind of push us away from God, and that will be our nexus of free will. And our free will lies in the fact that we are being convinced that what we want is what the Yetzer Hara wants, and we feel that's what I want. We're under their dominion. We're like the North Koreans, you know. We don't have a say in the matter because we have to answer up to the Almighty Yetzer Hara. But what about what God says? You know, is He really the king of us? I don't know. Maybe to a certain degree, yes, but a certain degree, no. And I think that's a very fair argument. If there's anything that someone says, this I cannot do, even though the Almighty tells me to do it, that means in that area of their lives, they are not under the control of God. They're saying, my God, my master, my king is the Yetzer Hara, and therefore I'm bound by this, you know. And that is what we have in this world, where that's possible. Perhaps when the Rambam is telling us that the only difference between this world and the times of Messiah is subjugation to the kingdom, that's the kingdom that we're talking about. That after Mashiach comes, once there is such a tangible, widespread, ubiquitous knowledge of God to such a degree that it's going to obliterate the Yetzer Hara, and therefore there's only one king left. And we're no longer subjugated to the king, quote unquote, that's our Yetzer Hara, right? We got rid of that. Now we're trying to free men, right? We to do what we want. You know, we're no longer shackled and beholden to the will of our Yetzer Hara. Perhaps that's what that means.
There's always just one king, right?
Yeah, but even on Rosh Hashanah, if you remember, during the prayers, there's a lot of prayers that go on. But we talk about Melech Elyon. It's a very important prayer called Melech Elyon, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about this great, wonderful king, which is God. And then in the middle, they close the parochas. They say Aval Melech Evyon. They say it quietly. It talks about this poor king, this beggar king. You know, and then they say Aval, and then they open it right in the middle. You remember that?
Yes.
That is kind of contrasting the two kings that we have. On one hand, we're loyal to God, you know, and of course, loyal. On the other hand, we're not. We're totally disloyal.
Well, but are you prepared to say
because
that
we have
two kings?
What?
Are you prepared to say that we have two kings?
No, I'm saying in reality, there's a difference between what the reality is. There's only one power.
Yeah.
However,
it's right.
we
When
behave in
he
a way.
hides.
But people have two kings. There's only one true king.
Right. I mean, well, you can
But
have
people
any-
have two kings.
Right. Well,
One
that's
king,
what I'm saying.
there's
There's
one
someone
king,
else.
but two
Has another
masters.
king. Exactly.
There are two masters.
That's like the second little king.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying it's not. I'm not trying to say that
It's not a
essentially
true king,
it's its
but-
own power. And the Talmud tells us, listen, the Yetzer Hara is very good
Oh, yeah.
because that creates something for us to aspire to. That creates meaning in our lives because now we have something that repels us from God. But for us to say that we're totally beholden to God, that's actually not true. You know, and maybe the times of Mashiach, that's what it will look like.
It'd be nice if we could be, but we got to work.
That's the
I
work.
mean, there's problems,
That's
right?
what life's about.
So
Life is
why can't
about
you
to
just
try
get rid of
to
that?
change our affiliation, our allegiances from our Yetzer Hara to God. That's what it means. I would synthesize that as that's what life's all about.
The rest is commentary.
Everything else is commentary. Go study.
Go and study.
Okay. I want to talk now about Chatam 18, resuscitation of the dead. There's some more stuff from Mashiach, but I want to at least dig in a little bit into this. I have to leave a little early. I have a babysitter, but we're going to do some of this. This is very interesting. So we're told that the Mishnah says, the Mishnah is even preceded the Talmud. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek l'olam haba. Anyone knows what that means?
Every Jew has a place in the
Has a place
Olam Haba.
Every Jew has a portion in the world to come. Every single Jew.
Where does that come from?
Shenemar, it brings a verse.
There you go.
It brings a quote of verse in the Torah. However, these are the people that don't have a portion of what to come. Means standard Jew, default status, you got a portion of what to come. However, unless you're one of the following sinners, and he gives a list of sinners. Someone who says this and someone who says that. The first thing it says of someone who has no portion of what to come, ha'omer ein tchias hamesim in the Torah, who's the person who says that there's no concept in the Torah of tchiyat hametim, of resuscitation of the dead. Thus, merely declaring that there's no biblical sources for reviving the dead, that alone disqualifies you from Olam Haba. That's what the Mishnah says. Thus, we could say, the first thing I think, the baseline for even the discussion of Chesed what is it? Well, the first thing is that we have to believe in it. And we have to believe in it, not only just believe in it as an ideal, but as an ideal that is biblically substantiated. And in fact, the Talmud goes on and brings at least 10. I lost track of how many sources it brings. They're all there. This is the Talmud of Sanhedrin. It starts on page 90, 90B, and it goes on for about a whole page, and the enormous pages, where it brings many, many verses. Go ahead.
But I don't understand. So it says you have to believe that the Torah substantiates this idea. If it's substantiated, then you have to believe it. You just
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, but there are people that would say that no, it's not a Torah-ic ideal.
Well, I understand.
And the rabbis
you
made
have
it
to
up.
believe that.
Oh,
You
no.
can use that.
You ever never heard that the rabbis made it up?
No.
It says Sanhedrin.
So I'd like that. And by the way, Maimonides, in his 13 Principles of Faith, that we've all heard of, Maimonides' 13 Principles of Faith, one of them is to believe in Mashiach. And one of them, the last one is that's number 12, and number 13 is to believe in Chet reviving the dead. So like we could say simply that the baseline is for us to believe that it's the biblical source, and in fact, Talmud goes on to bring about 10 or 12 biblical sources. Now, I want to point to one of the sources that it brings. It's more like a narrative that existed between a dialogue that happened regarding this discussion. And in fact, we find that the Gentiles that existed at the time of the Talmud, they had a fascination with this idea of dead people coming back to life. And the Talmud records several narratives that existed at the time. So the first one it says is Caesar. So we don't know which Caesar is, but he tells Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel is the rabbi, and Caesar.
It's a salad.
And we know that Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi, was the president. And we know that the leader of the Jewish people at the time was politically recognized by the Romans, and he had a dialogue with the local Caesar, with the Caesar at the time, and he said to him, "How does God take earth and form bodies out of it? How does that work? Like, what's the process?"
Is that in the Kuzari?
No, this is the Talmud, way before the Kuzari, right? What's the process, and how does that work? There's some magic. God makes some golem and makes a body out of the earth. What's the deal? So he tells him like this. He says, imagine you had in town 2 contractors. One of them builds houses out of water, and one of them builds houses out of cement. Which one is a more impressive feat? Water, right? Everyone would agree. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So he says, God, right? In this world, we see God creating humans out of water, and he's referring to sperm. It's a little nothing. It's water,
75% water.
And if God could create humans out of water, God could certainly create humans out of earth. Okay, that's the very clever dialogue that we have. It's interspersed with all the proofs and the way the Talmud goes on and meanders off. It brings a discussion with Cleopatra. We'll get to that in a second. But either way, I think there's the insight of the fact that it's not such a major deal. I mean, the reason why it's hard for us to think about dead people coming back to life is because we've never seen it before. You know, but if you dropped an alien onto planet Earth and said to him, okay, which one of them is more likely to bring about life? You know, and you describe the process that we're very familiar with as what brings about life. Or you say you take the materials and you just assemble it yourself. You know, you assemble it yourself, and in fact, you take the materials from an existing body material, and you just build it. Well, which one of them seems more simplistic?
I watched a lot of zombie movies. I'm pretty sure
Zombie.
come back to life is pretty simple. It's not the most complicated situation. I think somebody being alive before then is...
Yeah, and I always feel like this, like, you know, if you were to separate a human into just the raw materials, you could probably buy it for a few dollars in a pharmacy, you know, where a lot of water, a lot of carbon, you know, mostly just nonsense. You know, it's not so, you know, is that what a human is? Just a pile of this and a pile of that. It's like, you know, it's like
kind of, but it's
yes, on a
together.
molecular level, but a human is much more than that.
Mostly empty space, by the way.
As
it's
everything.
Design.
Yeah, so it's not so hard for us to think that if God could do all of this, most certainly God could do that. But either way, I think I want to point out that what is it telling us? It's telling us that in this world, the way we know humans are created is out of water. In Tchiat HaMeitim and in some other existence, they're not made out of water, they're made out of earth. Right? Your bodies are not composed out of water, they're composed out of earth. Who else do we know that his body was made out of earth? Adam. So I want to hold this thought because this is going to come back very crucially. Huh?
How much of a part of the earth is water? Isn't it 75%, just like a human?
No, that's the surface of the surface of
Who knows
Earth.
what's under it?
The geologists know.
I don't believe.
Oh, it depends on where.
It's all about theories, and I don't buy theories. Sorry, geologists.
Okay, so we have this idea of reviving dead people. Okay, you gotta believe in it. Fantastic. There's 10 or more sources, and it's compared to, I guess, this, contrasting building something out of water versus building something out of earth. Now listen to this, guys. What happens? Okay, so now we're back. Is that fun? So you go back to your job and say, it's been a while. Can I still get my job back? You know, I had someone ask me, like, what about my bank accounts? Like, in the Cayman Islands, do you go back and just get your bank accounts? You'll move back into your house and say, excuse me, this is my place? Like, what happens once, okay, fine, we reconstituted the humans, we reconnected the body and soul. Now what? What kind of life are we talking about here? So we find...
You come back you don't come back in the same body, right?
Yes.
Well, I
The
don't
same
know.
body?
I have no idea.
Well,
which...
we've never seen it, but it's a possibility.
I don't believe in theories.
Touche.
So, there's this. The Talmud tells us that there's another debate, this time between Antoninus and Rebbe. And listen to this question that he asks him. He tells him, he says, the body and the soul can never be judged.
Yeah.
Why? Because each one of them can self-exonerate. Why is that? Because God comes to the body and says, you sinner, you sinned. This is me, I'm a sinner. It's the soul. Look at me now. Ever since the soul left me, I'm like a rock on the ground, totally incapable of anything.
And blind.
So God goes
The
back to
blind
the...
guy and the deaf guy.
That's right. So God goes back to the angel, back to the soul, and says, you sinner. It's like, me? Look at me, I'm flying around like a bird. I'm flying like a bird. It's the body that sins. So each one of them, so they can never be judged. How could they ever be judged? Now, the problem with not having judgment is that the second you take away judgment from the big picture of the philosophy, you're essentially making... you're getting rid of the whole meaning aspect. Because once there's no ramifications, if there's no consequences, well, the actions obviously don't matter because there's no consequences. And that's why it's very important, like Maimonides tells us, 4 of the 13 principles of faith are about consequences, both for good and for bad. So it's a much bigger question that he's asking. He's not just asking a technical loophole in the system where they can each say, oh, you can't prove it was me. You can't prove it wasn't me. That's part, that's of course part of the question. But it's a much deeper question that once you separate the body and the soul, well, what do you have to judge both positively and negatively? What can be recipients of good and what can be recipients of bad? In respect to giving reward and punishment for someone's actions. Sure. So he tells them as follows, and like you guys mentioned, he tells them, he says that there was this king. I'll say it really quickly because there are people there that know it. I don't want to bore them, God forbid, with the details again.
I enjoy the story.
Especially if we're not looking for any nuance or anything like that. Excuse me.
Are you going to talk about the frowns?
No,
No.
I have so many.
Come on.
I have some other cool stuff. You'll be happy. I assure you. I will not disappoint. So he tells them like this: there was this king who had a beautiful orchard, and he hired 2 guards to watch the orchard. One of them was blind, and one of them was lame. And they're sitting there watching the orchard, and all these beautiful, luscious fruits. And the lame guard tells the other guy, says, "Hey, I see these beautiful fruits, but I can't walk and get them." He's like, "Oh, beautiful fruits? Where?" He says, "You know what? Let's conspire, and you'll give me a piggyback ride, and I'll direct you. Make a right, make a left. Oh, watch out for that branch, right? You know, and we'll go. We'll eat the fruits." So they go. He hops on his back, and he starts maneuvering, and they start eating all the fruits, and eventually all the fruits are gone. And King comes back and says to them, "Hey, where are all my fruits?" The lame guard says, "Me? I sinned? Look at me. I have no legs. How could I possibly have eaten the fruits?" And the blind guard tells the king, says, "I couldn't have eaten them. I'm blind. Must have been the other guy." So what did the king do? The king took the lame guard, put him back into piggyback position, and judged them like one. Says Rebbe, says the rabbi, Rebbe Judah the Prince, in the future, the Almighty will take the soul, put it back in the body, and judge them as one.
So what if the body's burned?
Yeah, so that's why we don't. That's why one of the reasons why we don't burn body is
Yeah, I
because
know that.
we still
But
value.
if it is
Let's
burned.
say like there was an apartment fire and heaven forbid someone committed.
Well,
Well,
if Nazis came back and burned
There is a Talmud that talks about this bone at the core. I think it's the bottom of the spine. That never gets extinguished, and that's what is used as the foundation to rebuild the body. But either way, what if the body decomposes? Those are the questions, right?
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
that's obvious. Skeleton from other parts.
I'm sorry.
What difference does it make? Body is the body.
Yeah, but body is a vessel, right?
But if there is no body, but if there is no
But God
body,
made
that's
Adam.
what I'm saying.
If God made Adam out of dirt, it doesn't matter if there's bones or not.
Same you had now.
If you were here, God will reconstitute you.
Well, then why do they not burn the body?
Well, maybe that's just a mitzvah
Even when they
to
do,
Well,
bury.
yes, but
I mean,
would it not matter if you burn the
No,
body?
the Torah says you have to bury the body.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still a mitzvah to bury the body, right?
Yeah.
So-
Okay, we're going above and beyond where it doesn't really matter anymore. Because
So
God
it
can
does
do
matter
all
because
things.
it's a mitzvah not to burn the body. It's a mitzvah.
Yes,
It's a
but if
very-
you do, it doesn't
It's a
matter.
mitzvah to
You
bury.
will still be judged the same way.
It'd be better if it's left alone the way it is.
Yeah,
You will be
because you
judged
burn
the
the
same
body.
way. You just might have another judgment upon you for burning your body.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So now you have something else you did wrong.
Yes, exactly.
So, what does this tell us? This is essentially imagery of reunification of body and soul, right? It seems like it's telling us that the purpose of this unity of body and soul is for judgment. Once someone dies, okay, they cannot be judged because the body and the soul is separated, and each one of them has this argument of self-exoneration. And it's a very good argument. Thus, you have to put the body and soul back together because otherwise you can't possibly judge them. Sorry, it's the babysitter attached to me. My son is making a ruckus. Apologize. That's what it seems like, right?
Whenever you need to.
No problem. Yeah.
Children making a work.
That makes a lot of sense, right? If you have a body and a soul and you want to judge them, it's not possible to judge them separately. So you have to put them together. It's kind of like a technicality because otherwise it's like a loophole. You know, you got to fix the loophole, and thus you have to insert the soul back into the body and then judge them. Well, what happens after that? Well, then maybe that's if that's what Tchiyat HaMetim is all about. It's just for judgment. It's just a possibility to enable judgment. Okay, well then that's what happens. Now, who would that be for? For everyone, right? Everyone who needs to be judged. Good people, bad people, in between people, really terrible people, really fantastic people. Everyone needs to be judged. As part of the whole human condition is that we have to have a meaningful life. Thus, our actions have to have consequences. We can't have consequences unless we're judged. We can't be judged unless we have the body and soul back together. We have to put the body and soul back together, get the judgment, and move on. Farted, right?
Does everyone get judged or just Jews?
Everyone. All humans. That's right.
Does
Okay.
everyone get judged on different levels?
Everyone's judged on their own level. That's right. That's the Almighty. But the Almighty is the judge, right?
I think you're asking.
Yes, everyone gets judged
Yehudim,
on their own levels
non-Yehudim.
depending on where you are. Are you Jew? Are you
Yeah,
Muslim?
but the going,
Are you Christian?
the
Are
going-
you...
Yeah, but
Buddhist.
the Almighty takes everything into account, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. Here's where it gets interesting.
No, but there's one question. Of course, each one is judged according to its level. Like Moshe was like.
You're a Jew, so you're
That's
judged.
right.
But
But
the highest level,
Jews
so...
and non-Jews are as
Yeah,
a
I
group
mean,
judged
of
for
course.
different.
Then-
Of course,
yes, obviously.
of course, we have a much higher bar. That's why we
Because
get
the Torah was
punished much
given
more
to you.
severely. You know.
Yes, to you.
So like
Must
this.
follow, or you judge on that level regardless.
So it says like this. It says another question that was asked by a noble, this time a woman. This is Cleopatra. The Talmud quotes Cleopatra.
She's not Jewish.
She was not Jewish. That's right. And she asked Rabbi Meir, and she asked me a very interesting question. She says, "Okay, the bodies are coming back to life. Okay, got no problem with that. Are they going to have clothing, or are they going to be naked?" That's the question that she asks. I don't know, and I think it's probably a good question, you know? That's a question.
It's right there.
It's not real.
It's not kosher. I warn you. So don't
You
eat
don't
it.
eat it. Yes.
Uh-oh.
Did I let in the June bug?
It's gone.
Where's my cats when I need them?
So, that was her question. So Rabbi Meir responds to her like this, as in, the classic Jewish response to any question is to give a mashal, to give a parable. He says to them, I'll give you an example. He says, you take a kernel of wheat, and the kernel of wheat, if you want to plant it as a seed, you have to take off the chaff and you have to put it in the ground. So you take a kernel of wheat and it goes into the ground naked, but it comes out clothed. So tzaddikim, righteous people, that we put them into the ground with clothing, because as we know that they have a barrel of tachlichim, burial shrouds, they go into the ground with clothing. How much more will they emerge? How much more? Most certainly, they will emerge with clothing as well. That's an example of a kal v'chomer, right? If wheat goes in naked, comes out with clothing, right? The tzaddikim, the right people, they go with clothing. They most certainly will emerge with
What
clothing.
about Adam and Eve?
Huh?
They
They
had
came
clothing.
out with clothing?
They had clothing.
They came out with clothing.
I think
They
we're
came out naked.
They were created naked.
When
but
they were
died.
created, they came from the earth.
But
Yeah,
they
but then
were.
we're not talking about being created. We're
Right,
talking
but
about death.
they weren't. They
At that point,
weren't.
they were not human.
That is not.
But we're separating this because if we were to go without clothing, we come back with clothing. So if we were created, you understand where I'm coming from?
There's a much better question that you should have asked.
I'm pretty sure you understand.
I understand what you
asking
said.
correctly.
Yes. And that's not. I'm saying it's not a perfect example because that's not the case of reviving the dead, right? That's not Tchias HaMesim.
Yes,
It's not
it's
Tchias HaMesim.
world creation, but
They were
Okay.
never alive.
I'm not
Fine
familiar
question.
with the burial process, so there's clothes.
There's special clothing designed for burial, and that's what they bury people in.
You can't wear socks, huh?
You can't wear shoes.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
just
Can't wear
the
socks
like
or
these
shoes?
sheets or whatever.
It's a cotton shroud, right?
Either way, I'm shocked that no one asked the question. Clearly, you guys are not focused exactly on the words.
this is a question I meant to
Ooh.
ask.
I'll read it. Should I read it again? See who's asked the question.
Yeah, read it again.
Sorry, guys, that was a little barb. I'm taking it
Come
back.
on, come on.
Let's go.
Okay, so Cleopatra asked Rabbi Meir when people come out, right? When they reemerge, are they with clothing or are they naked? So he tells them, "Oh, I'll give you a kal v'chomer. You take in wheat, you put it into the ground, it goes in
Right,
naked,
right.
it comes out with clothing. Tzaddikim, the righteous people, you put them in with clothing. How much more so will they emerge with clothing?
What about those that aren't tzaddikim?
You guys all unanimously told me that reviving the dead is for everyone. Why? Because it's for judgment. If it's for judgment, as it clearly indicates in the Dharma, it's for judgment. And everyone has to be judged. Why would you think otherwise? And therefore, Why is it? Why are they mentioning tzaddikim? Who cares about tzaddikim? Tzaddikim, non-tzaddikim, average people. Why would it talk about tzaddikim?
Can people be judged before?
But you can't be judged unless the body and soul are reunified. We just established that. If you can't be judged before the body and soul are reunified, everyone has to be reunified. And now, why is it talking about tzaddikim? Why is it mentioning tzaddikim?
Yeah.
That's one point. I think it's a good question. In fact, I find other places in the Talmud as well. Go ahead.
Do you emerge with more clothes or less? Because when we're judged on Yom Kippur, we're supposed to be umul.
Well, it doesn't say that. It just says we emerged clothed.
We emerged.
I don't know what that even means.
Yeah.
But I think there's another very interesting point, and that is...
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What age are you going to be originally?
Yeah, that's a good question. What age? But if we accept reincarnation as fact, which body, what its spouse is...
Whatever, however your body died, that's what you're getting judged in.
80, 90 years old or whenever they die.
Well, but
You're
remember...
going to be praying to God, please close everybody.
Well, Leonard, regardless, you either died at 80, so you're going to be judged for 80 years of life, or you died at 20,
Right,
you're
but-
judged for 20 years
I
of
know,
life.
but I want to deal with a more fundamental question. If putting the soul back in the body is just about judging, and we can't judge unless you have a body and the soul together, then it doesn't really matter. Like, we just need to be able to judge him. Once we're done judging, then that's the whole question. Okay, so the question is, are you a 50-year-old at the trial, or are you a 72-year-old at the trial? But if it's just that, if it's all about that, then I don't think it's such an important question. Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it's something to discuss, but it's not a core question. If it's something more than that, if it's more than just a possibility to avoid the problem, the technicality of a trial, well, then that's a very strong question.
The tzaddik doesn't let its body inhibit its soul.
So,
You're talking about the body and soul becoming one.
okay,
So that's why it's mentioning a tzaddik.
okay. So you're saying really everyone gets revived, but the tzaddik is somewhat different.
When Moses
I think it's a good takeaway. The good takeaway is there's something different here with righteous people. But what else does it tell us here? What's the imagery here?
Well,
There's some
what's he
striking
clothed with?
imagery.
What's he clothed with?
Yeah, that's another thing.
the
It's the
striking imagery.
spiritual.
It's telling us like this, guys. It's telling us. Go ahead, Miriam.
Okay, sorry, I'm going backwards a little bit. Okay, so our soul and our body are combined, but are we also judged as a group? Because we're supposed to act as a group on Earth.
On Rosh Hashanah, we're judged as one. I believe here we're judged as an individual as well. There are some times where we get judged collectively, as we see in the Torah several times. Jewish people get judged collectively. We find in Talmud several references for collective judgment, most notably Talmud
That's
in
pretty
Shabbos
definite.
55a.
Collective punishment.
Collective punishment as well. That's a very important philosophical dilemma, I think, to discuss.
Still
But either way,
pretty
this is, I think, as individuals.
Okay.
Either way, we find some, I think, incredibly striking imagery, and that is that what do we compare? We compared a kernel into the ground, planting something emerges. Now, what emerges? So you take a seed and you plant it. It's something which is essentially the same thing that was put into the ground, right? At the DNA level. But it is a full development of that idea. It's a full manifestation of that idea, right? It's not the same thing. It's not that the seed comes out. No,
Like
it's
plant a nut from a tree
It's
in a
seed.
whole tree.
tree,
and all
exactly.
these
It's the
nuts
same
come out.
thing, but it's a development of that idea. And then it says, as an example of that, you put the body into the ground, and something else comes out. That's the comparison. Now, if it was just this example, it wouldn't be enough. However, 2 pages later in the Talmud, it says like this. It quotes a verse in Proverbs. The verse says as follows. I'll read you the verse. The grave and the narrow part of the womb, land unsated with water and fire that never says enough. Seems like a very cryptic
Wait, can you
verse.
read that one more
You say
time?
it one more
The
time.
grave
The grave?
and the narrow part of the womb, land unsated with water, and fire that never says enough. What does that mean? And the Talmud asks a question. It says, what, in heaven's name, does a grave have to do with the narrow part of the womb?
That women
You emerge from it,
create.
from both.
So it says like this. Ma, right, rechem, motziu machnis, just like a rechem at the narrow part of the womb, something goes in and something comes out. So too, a grave, something goes in and something comes out. That's what it says. And then it says, it develops the idea further. It says that in the case of the example, right? So the narrow part of the womb, it enters discreetly, but it emerges screaming with wails. Right, the baby comes out screaming. A grave that goes in, and everyone's crying. It goes in with wails. How much more certainly does it come out with wails? And that's a reference to this massive shofar that we're going to have at this time. It's going to make lots of noise, lots of the aforementioned ruckus. Either way, what do we find here? We're comparing something. They have a seed going in. There's a progression. There's a gestation. There's a time, right? You put a seed into the ground. You nurture it, and you wait, and something develops out of the ground. Similarly, you put a seed into the womb. You wait, something develops, and something comes out. And what comes out? The exact same thing that went in, essentially. Right? It's the same DNA. Exact same DNA. However, if you take a look... Obviously. Right. True. But it's...
Well, with
It emerges-
fertile and around
Something
it
new.
grows when
No,
nurtured.
but it's half and half, right? Okay.
Okay,
Well,
but
not
what it
necessarily
is
that, but
what it
what
is
it
is yes, it may be the same thing. If you flash back to what happened 9 months ago, it's a unification of two things, but it's a much further developed idea. So I was thinking, this is my thought here. I will share with you guys tonight here. I think lightly, and I spoke to Rabbi Cohn, who is the in-house guru in these matters, and he told me, he's like, oh yeah, there's two different kinds of Chesed Mason. And to me, that was like, my mind was blown. He said that.
That's a lot what are you going to us?
I'm what? So, and I think it's clear here. I think that what it's telling us is as follows. Yes, the idea of reunification of body and soul happens to everyone. You know why? Because they need to be judged. Okay? They need to be judged. However, for tzaddikim, there's an entirely different experience. And that is, it's a certain rebirth, and it's a certain manifestation of the seed that they implanted when they died, so to speak. And that is, what goes into the ground? The seed. Well, what's the seed? The seed is what's going to develop. So essentially, the way you lived your life, that's going to create the seed that's going to go into the ground, and that's what's going to emerge. It's not going to emerge the same seed. It's going to emerge something which is a development of that seed, but it's not going to be something entirely different. It's going to be that in a developed manner. Thus, your actions, your life choices, your behaviors, your mitzvahs, whatever you do spiritually to contribute to who you are as a human, right? That is the seed that you are preparing for your death, essentially. Now, you put that into the ground when you die. That's what death is. You're putting it in the ground, and that's what's going to emerge when during Chesed Mason. Now, if you didn't invest so much time in the higher pursuits, in the spiritual pursuits, in the pursuits of your soul, you'll come out because everyone needs to come out, But you're not going to have vitality. You're not going to be this tzaddikim that we're talking about that's going to emerge clothed. That is a manifestation of the wheat. The wheat has meanings behind it. Now, additionally, I think this is going to kind of bleed into the question that Leonard brought in here.
So the revival of the dead will happen only once?
Well, I said I don't know if these two will happen at the same time. Rabbi Cohn seemed to have mentioned that they may happen at separate times. I don't know. It's clear that this is true. I've studied the text several times. It's clear that there's, if you actually even look how it's structured on the Talmud, because there's a few pages of Talmud, very big pages. But if you just follow the structure, the format of the Talmud, it's clear that it's two separate things. That there's this one discussion that comes, that this entire 2 pages about revival of the dead, and it gives all this imagery and the womb and the wheat and all that, and then it says later on this whole question, this whole debate, this whole dialogue, as like an addendum to this whole discussion, and where it brings Antoninus and Rebbe and talks about judgment. It seems clear that this is something entirely different, even though it's the same thing essentially. But it might be the same thing, putting body and soul together. But what exactly is this? What exactly is this product that's emerging? I want to say a few more important points here. to just complete the information to say the idea that I wanted to share. This is all introduction, by the way.
That was chapter 1.
The intro pages. We haven't even gotten to chapter 1.
Prologue. Yeah.
We find the Talmud says, and I mentioned this before. It's the first mission that says, if someone says, "I don't believe in Tchias HaMeisim, I don't believe in resuscitation of the dead," from the Torah, he has no portion in Olam Haba. Now, Olam Haba is one thing, and Tchias HaMeisim is another thing. Is that right? They're separate things. They're the same words, different words, right? So one is reviving the dead, and one is this next world, right? Ostensibly, so I thought. You open up the Talmud asks the question, wait, why if someone says I don't believe in revival of the dead, why don't they get a portion of what to come? Good question. It says as follows. Who kafar b'tchias hameisim, v'frito chelacheret b'tchias hameisim. He rejected the validity of revival of the dead, therefore he doesn't get revival of the dead. What do you mean? We're talking about revival of the dead to Olam Haba. What's revival of the dead to revival of the dead? Well, what's the comparison? You really guys hear the question? Yeah? Should I repeat it?
So,
Yes. The Talmud, the Mishnah says, what's the law? The law is if someone says, I don't believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim, right, they have no portion of the world to come. Olam Haba. Ostensibly, these are separate things. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in X. I don't get Y.
Wait, who
The
does
Mishnah.
not get in the world to come?
Someone who says that there's no biblical source for revival of the dead. The Talmud asks, why? Why, if someone says, I don't believe that there's a biblical source for revival of the dead, I have no portion of the world to come. And the Talmud says, he rejected revival of the dead, therefore he doesn't get revival of the dead.
He's not gonna. Yeah, he's not gonna.
So
be,
he's not gonna be
he's not
revived.
going to be. He's not gonna go into the.
Yes. So what it's telling us essentially is that revival of the dead and Olam Haba are interchangeable terms. And we know Olam Haba is a reward. However, if revival of the dead is all about just judgment, right?
No, so
well,
it's
then
not.
it's irrespective of reward and punishment. So I think to complete the thought is like this: that Olam Haba, this next world, is this other world that hopefully we know that as Jews we'll have a portion of the world to come. Hopefully, unless we, I guess mess up really badly, and. We know as well that this is, the Talmud says, this is the Talmud in Bracha 17. All about there's no eating, there's no sleeping, there's no intercourse, there's no drinking. It's just.
that always rings a joke, right?
You can't.
Well,
This is what the Talmud says. There's none of that.
We'll get to the good part.
All right. And it describes this kind of other existence. Like there's no eating. Wait a minute. But we have a body, right? We just said that you got your unification of body and soul. So how could there be no eating? There's no drinking. There's no sleep. What does it mean a body not needing sleep? Like, so what kind of body is emerging here? So I think the point now, here's the point I want to say. And that is like this. Us as humans, and I mentioned this several times, and it's a common theme because it's one of the core themes in all of Jewish thought. Us humans, we have a body and a soul. Who's dominant? Right? Who's the host? And who is just there? Our body is dominant. We're always body first, soul second. I'll give you an example. If you say, I'm not drinking water for 7 days, someone locks you in a room, and I'm drinking water, you'll die. Because your body needs water, and your body is dominant. If you say, I'm not going to study Torah for 7 days, what's going to happen to you?
Nothing.
You're essentially robbing your soul of the vital nutrients that it needs to survive. But because the soul is of secondary importance to us in our current configuration, go ahead.
Question. Your body will die after 7 days with no water.
Yeah.
But your soul isn't going to die after 7 days?
No, that's why
No.
body is first, soul is
Because
second.
our body is what keeps us alive in this world. It's of first
How
importance.
is the soul?
Right? Yes, but the soul is of much less significance, at least to us.
And the soul
in
doesn't
our
die.
in our
It's
paradigm.
just your connection.
So what
with
if I
God.
chose not to eat,
doesn't die.
not to drink water for
Right.
7 days, and I died?
Yes, then
that-
you're
You're going to
that's
be
a bad
judged.
thing. It's a
You're
terrible
going to be
thing.
judged for
Why?
that.
Yeah,
If I
this-
decided
this
to
is the
study
design.
Torah for 7 days and not drink water,
No,
That's
you
the
have to
design.
take care. You have
Yeah,
to take care of
because
your body.
in this world, regardless,
so if
almost
my body
regardless,
wants to come
in
in
this-
sin, do I have to take care of it as
No,
well?
drinking water is not the same.
in this world, you cannot neglect your
My
body.
book.
But I mean, I'm just saying it has more needs
Go
than
ahead.
just
Yes.
water and food, you know.
What
Yeah,
else?
I'm sorry?
Tell me.
You guys speak a little
You
louder.
know, you have a-
Dennis, your brother's asking a question.
Sorry.
You brought the conversation of what kind of a body is it going to be.
Yes.
One sleep, one eat, no need for food, which this physical body, so it's not going to be exactly the same body.
So let me finish my point. In this world,
Therefore,
let me finish. Go
yes,
ahead.
Therefore, that body was already in. Okay, is going to be walking on this earth. The new body,
No.
I don't
or
know.
it's going to be somewhere else.
Let's assume it's this earth. Go ahead.
And back to Cleopatra question, it answers itself. Are we going to be female and male, or it's going to be just us? Just something.
Okay,
like
but
the
these are
God
all
created
questions that
Adam from the beginning.
let me finish my point, and then we'll see if the questions still
Okay.
exist. Okay. In this current configuration of us as humans, we have a body and soul. The body is dominant. The body is a host. The body is in charge. Our soul is we have a soul. If you don't have a soul, you're dead. But our soul is we don't feel it. It's not first kind of thing. It's something that we have. That's not who we are. Now, in our next world, it's going to be the opposite. Yes, we'll have a body, right? But it's of such minor significance. You could just like in this world, if someone neglects their soul, they could still live, right? You know, someone doesn't study Torah. You look at those magazines that you have there, right? The Men's Fitness. Those people don't study Torah.
They're out right there.
They're alive, right? They're alive. You know why? Because in this
Some of those
world,
guys study Torah.
maybe yes. In this world, it's a body-centric world. We have a soul, of course. A body, soul, so what a human means. But that's what it's about. In the next world, it's the exact opposite. Your soul is what you have, right? You have a body as well because you're a human. However, you don't need to eat, you don't need to drink, you don't need to sleep. None of that. Just like we don't need to tend to the agenda of our soul to alive. It's reversed.
Yeah.
Thus, the seed that we put into the ground. What's the seed that we put into the ground?
Body.
It's it's the body, of course, but it's our life's work.
who we are.
And the more we live our life as people who are dedicated to the agenda of the soul, who focus on the responsibilities, so to speak, of the soul, or the priorities and the values of our soul, when we do that, well, then that's what emerges. A soul-centric kind of reality. If it's just about our body, well, then in a world where the soul is all that matters, right? Then you don't have that, and then what do you have? You just have a body and soul put together, and that's it. That's not Olam Haba. Olam Haba is this world where the design, the preeminent or perfect design of body and soul is soul entirely dominant and body just there. And that is what will that is how the relationship kind of coincides, wherein the body is just there, the soul is who we are, and what we put into the ground is how we lived in this world will be reflected in how we will emerge in the next world. Thus, when the Torah tells us, focus on your soul, focus on your soul, focus on your soul, focus on your soul, again and again and again, and neglect your body, and withhold from your body, and say no to your body, and try to unshackle yourself from the body. What it's trying to do is prepare us for the most important thing that we'll ever do in our lives, and that is show up with our investments. What do we have? What have we emerged from this whole experience? If we just think about our body, then that's all we worry about. Well, that's all we got. That's what we put into the ground. That's what emerges afterwards, when all is said and done. And then you're not equipped at all.
At your retirement, you're gonna get the gold watch, or they're gonna give you the rubber ring.
Now,
Rubber ring.
withhold
from your body.
Huh?
What do you withhold from your body?
Well, that's what does the Torah tell us? You open the book that's under your elbow, and you'll see 365 different categories of withholding your body, and that is training us to be someone who can live in this world where the body is of minor significance. Now, what's interestingly is that we're told is that this body is formed out of earth, not out of water, out of earth. And I asked you guys over here, who else was formed out of earth? You said Adam. If you read about Adam prior to the sin, you get an insight into what it's like to be soul first and body second, where the body is of less significance. And you read any of the sources, go to the sources and read about Adam pre-sin. Adam is like someone who lived, they had a body, yes, but like you said, he didn't notice he was naked. How do you not notice you're naked? How do you not notice it? Can you imagine? Because it's just like you don't notice.
Secondary.
We don't notice right now that our soul is desiring some mitzvah. We have no idea. It's craving a mitzvah. You know what mitzvah your soul's craving? I don't know. Right? You don't know. Well, how do you not know? This is.
There's 613 of them.
How can you possibly not know?
Studying Torah. That's why we're here.
We're guessing. Maybe yes, maybe no. But imagine I woke you up in the middle of the night and say, "What are you craving? What soul?" You probably punch me in the face, right? I call you up at work. You're like, "What mitzvah is your soul right now craving?" You probably won't have any idea. You have no idea. Well, Adam was like, how could he possibly notice the fact that he was naked? To us, we see things from the opposite vantage point. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, dude, you're naked, right? Get some pants on, right? Of course. And Adam, once he's sinned, he's like, dude, I'm naked. He's hiding. Oh, who told you you're naked, says God. Ah, you sinned. Oh, now you're a different kind of human. Suddenly your body is now of importance, and only notice that.
Now you're human.
That's right.
Well, how?
I like that.
Children
now,
do not know they're naked, do they?
Who?
Children.
that's a good point.
When I have a son, he likes to get naked. He doesn't know he's naked. He's not
Good point.
ashamed of himself.
Either way, guys, I have to leave. And I apologize. I have a baby, so I told you there at
See how
what's
it
going-
is. We start asking hard questions and he's out.
Thank you very much for
God
making me
willing,
here for
next time we will follow up with this. I'm not going to run away from it, but you have to come back now.
I'm gonna
But you
make
have
a
to
list
teach your
next
child
time.
to say
You know that,
yes.
right?